my name is Anders, and I have the pleasure to present on a company called Respiratorius. I should say I'm based in Lund of southern Sweden, so I can't blame the jet lag. I do battle the residue of a man cold, so hopefully my voice will be audible through the entire presentation. So obviously, if you attend a presentation on a company called Respiratorius, you would deduce that it's about the respiratory area, and that would make perfect sense, but that, I'm afraid, is not true. Life is full of surprises. So the project that I'm about to present is called VAL-001, and that's a phase 3 ready drug with orphan drug designation, and it's for treatment of diffuse large B-cell lymphoma. So it's in an oncology product. Obviously, Respiratorius has some respiratory projects as well, but that is not in focus for today's presentation. So the first slide is entitled "Who am I to talk?" and that's a very valid question. I don't work for Respiratorius per se. I'm a board member of Respiratorius, and the reason I get to represent the company in meetings such as this is that I have a long-standing background in business development. I have worked almost all my life, because the pharmaceutical industry is a bit like Hotel California. Once you've checked in, you can't leave, right? So all my life, working for sort of medium-sized pharmaceutical companies, Meda, which is now Mylan, of course, very big company these days, Ferring, still independent, a 2 billion euro company roughly, and the same for Leo Pharma. And I used to head global business development in Leo Pharma. Before 2017, when I went complete entrepreneur galore and also board member, so I represent a few companies here in this meeting, but the presentation is supposed to focus on Respiratorius, so enough about me. So what are we looking for? Well, we're first and foremost looking for an industrial partner willing to acquire or license the rights to VAL-001, the project, globally or regionally, and taking the responsibility for phase 3 and commercialization of this orphan drug opportunity. Our second choice would be to find an investment partner willing to back the development inside of Respiratorius, but that is quite clearly a second choice because it is very much of a virtual company. So our preference would be to find an industrial partner, and I think we'll succeed in doing that. So a brief presentation on Respiratorius. It's a spin-out from Lund University. It's located in Medical Village in Lund in southern Sweden, as I said. It's a public company. It's listed on the Spotlight Stock Exchange, formerly Aktiestorget, if you're keen on the Swedish pronunciation there. It does develop some respiratory products as well, hence the name. But again, the focus of this presentation is on the VAL-001 project, which is in oncology. Okay, so let's start with a sort of executive summary on the VAL-001 project. It's a phase 2B, it's actually not a phase 2B ready product anymore. We've got the clearance to go to phase 3, so it's a phase 3 ready, patent protected and orphan drug designated asset in oncology. So it has, well, valproic acid, as you might be familiar with. It is an HDAC inhibitor, and it also upregulates the CD20 cell surface marker, which is the reason for its working. So it actually loosens up the chromatin, thereby making the cancer cells more susceptible to chemotherapy. But due to the upregulation of CD20, it also enhances the efficacy of rituximab, which you heard in the previous presentation as well. We have data from phase 1/2A showing a statistically significant overall survival benefit versus risk-matched data, which I'll come back to obviously later on in the presentation. And if you take that data and run it through health economic modeling, aiming for a quality benchmark in terms of pricing, the pricing opportunity will be quite vast, actually in the $100,000 per patient range. And the next steps is obviously to take this through phase 3, and to try to emulate the data that's come out of phase 2A. So let's first take a step back and examine the indication here. Diffuse large B-cell lymphoma is the most common type of aggressive lymphoma. It has 60,000 new cases annually in the US and Europe. It typically targets the elderly population, and the standard therapy, which we don't intend to displace but tend to add onto as a neoadjuvant therapy, is R-CHOP, and the R is rituximab. It's labeled here as an ineffective treatment. I think that might be a little bit harsh, but there is certainly an unmet medical need, because 10 to 15% of the patients don't respond at all, and 40% relapse within 18 months. And the 5-year survival leaves something to be desired. So there is an unmet medical need for an improvement here. Yes, and as I already alluded to, valproate is an HDAC inhibitor, which is making the cells more susceptible to the chemotherapy. And on top of that, as I also mentioned, it does upregulate the CD20, thereby enhancing the efficacy of the rituximab part of the treatment too. Valproate is a very well-established API. It has been used for a long time in epilepsy, so no surprises in terms of toxicity there, obviously. And the in vitro data shows that this potentiates the cytotoxic effect. Prednisolone. Yes, of course, in vitro data is interesting, but since we also have clinical data, let me just basically show you the in vitro data suggesting that the more of VAL-001 you throw at these standardized cell lines, the greater the efficacy. Probably not so surprising. But we do have clinical data too. So phase 1 enrolled some 20 patients. And of course, the phase 1 is mostly about finding safety markers. So finding the safety, the maximum tolerated dose. The maximum dose tried was 120 milligram per kilo per day, whereas the maximum tolerated dose was defined as 60 milligram per kilogram per day. And the deciding factor was auditory side effects, which was tinnitus or hearing impairment. Going on to the phase 2A, which is the most interesting part, these patients continued in the phase 2A study, where they were compared against risk-matched patients, and the data comes out as follows. So obviously the red line above is the VAL-001 treated patients, where VAL-001 is applied as a neoadjuvant therapy on top of the R-CHOP, and the green line there is the R-CHOP therapy. So this is obviously a statistically significant survival benefit. And yes, granted, this is only phase 2, so would have to be, that data would have to be emulated in a phase 3 trial, which is the next step. However, if it is emulated in the phase 3 trial, the pricing opportunity here is quite significant. If you just go by quality benchmarks in terms of pricing, it would indicate a pricing possibility around the $100,000 per patient range, given current pricing. However, that is not likely to be the case, and I'll come back to that in a second. Because what is the product really? Well, it is essentially a fixed dose regimen comprised of prednisolone, which is to be taken consecutively for 5 days, and valproic acid in a unique formulation that we have developed that allows for twice daily dosing, and that is to be taken consecutively for 3 days. And on day 3, the R-CHOP regimen, the standard R-CHOP regimen starts. So, key aspects of this case, well, if you do the math here, we've got 60,000 patients, and provided that we also in the phase 3 trial can emulate the data of the phase 2 trial and have this significant survival benefit, the uptake is likely to be very significant. If you multiply that by the pricing potential that was indicated by the health economic modeling, you get to quite a substantial turnover. Now, obviously, as we're using 2 well-known and established APIs, I don't think that quality benchmarking in terms of pricing will quite cut it. Not because of logical reasons, but because of gut feeling, and well, coming from pharmacoeconomic and pricing as I do, I know that that is not exactly a square science in terms of getting the price that you desire. But even if you discount tremendously on the quality-based pricing benchmark, then you will end up with quite a significant turnover. If you discount 90% of what is indicated in the health economic model, you still end up with several $100 million or dollars worth of turnover. So quite a significant opportunity. So again, what we're looking for is primarily an industrial partner who's willing to accept the challenge to carry this through a phase 3 program with the aim of emulating the phase 2 data that has already come out. If that succeeds, I think, irrespective of how much you wish to discount the price on the basis of the quality benchmarks, you will have quite a significant business opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.